This is Songwriting in the All Together with David Rangel, Sohail and James Bar Bowen. In March 2020, as COVID-19 began to stalk the land in earnest, lockdown was declared in the UK and all the gigs were cancelled. We are three songwriters, musicians and performers who happen to live next door to each other in West Yorkshire. And so we decided that in the absence of performance opportunities, we would get together once or twice a week to share some songs and to enjoy each other's company. Gradually, this evolved into a songwriting circle, and we talked more about the craft and industry of what we do to write songs. This series of podcasts is a product of these sessions and conversations.
Here we are, back again in the crib. Okay, so Songwriting and the All Together, episode 5. This is grabbing the audience's attention. So, how are you guys? James Bar Bowen and Sohail Khan.
I'm very well. I hope everyone out there in podcast land is feeling fine and fettled, as we say up north.
Yeah, I'm doing all right, thank you. Yeah, good to be here. Good to see you guys again.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we've covered quite a lot in, I'm going to say the last couple of months now. We've been talking about the rules of making good songs, the art of storytelling. Now we're looking at sort of really drawing the attention in. So some of those elements are still going to come into play, I'm pretty certain. But the thing that I'm really interested in today is the first song that you have, that could be in your set, that could also be the first song of an album. And also looking at singles, so the songs that we extract, perhaps if you're doing an open mic as well, if you have a limit with the amount of time that you've got, what songs are the ones which are going to reach out and grab the audience attention. So yeah, we're going to kick off with an early example from you, Sohail, and the King Gardner's Gift Set.
King Gardner's Gift Set, and the song's called Remaining Wise.
Remaining Wise. So before I play this song, for those of you who haven't tuned in before, the other half of Sohail is Andy, who cannot be with us, so we are using a recorded version. Tell us about this song then, Remaining Wise. I mean, is this the first song that you use in a set, or...?
It's often the first song we use in a set, and often it's the first, if we've got like an open mic and there's only one song, in that open mic, that slot, we'll use this song as well, possibly. Okay. Or it usually comes up, and it's one that's kind of like a signature tune. That's for us, really, I would say. So we would use it for opening a set, top of the album, and as our fave song to use for when we were doing an open mic slot.
Yeah. Hey, right, great all-rounder then, let's hear it.
Remaining wise, remain in light, for when the darkness falls you will shine. Yes, you will shine. Anger flares, blinds all who's there, just leaves behind darkness and prayers. Darkness and prayers. Tit for tat and this for that is making sure we'll get it back. We'll all get it back. Break the mold, go search your soul for what your heart already knows. Already knows. We're all worrying about our dreams. We're all worrying about our dreams for what the future could mean. Could be nothing that we've seen. Could be nothing that we've been. Truthless and tied, the media ruminates and grinds the truth rules, sailing their flailing ship of fools on rising tides, on rising tides. We are the future's happiness, the future's history, I guess. We are the future's guests. What will be, I am not sure, but it's best to open any door with mindfulness, with mindfulness. We're all wiring up our dreams. We're all wiring up our dreams to what the future could mean. Could be nothing that we've seen. Could be nothing that we've been. You're amazing, yes. You're creating. You're relating your own truth from the tensions of this life's inventions. Your intention is you. Could be nothing that we've seen. Could be nothing that we've been. You're amazing. You're creating. You're relating your own truth from the tensions of this life's inventions. Your intention is you. Well, you're relating, yes. Yes, you're creating, you're relating your own truth from the tensions of this life's inventions. Your intention is you.
Nice. It sets the scene very well, so that's the first thing I'm gonna. I mean, by setting the scene, I mean it sets more of a tone as to what we expect to hear from you. And it's a very mature song as well. That's one thing I really took from it.
Thank you.
Not only in it.
What do you mean by you say mature song?
Yeah, I was going to say you might initially think that that's down to lyrics and that's part of it as well, but it's also the structure of it. Going back to previous episodes when you talked about the recipes and what goes into the song. Even though you do have the verse chorus structure, I'm hearing like middle set. I'm hearing a good outro there as well. Like something changes, something shifts in the last minute of that song as well. Yeah. Key changes. We're going into majors as well. So you've kind of got everything there. We've kind of got everything that your musicianship and your songwriting ability is being delivered.
It kind of sets out the stall for if we were to do an album or to do a set. It would be setting out the stall to the audience about the nature of the kind of songs we do. It's kind of laid back a little bit, but then also it kind of ends on a kind of has an anthemic quality to it in that chorus and the outro as well. So it sets out what kind of music we do to the audience. So what kind of music we do to the audience, but what kind of music we will be doing to the audience throughout that set if we were to do a set of other numbers, say about 8 or 7 other songs.
It's interesting because I've heard more upbeat songs from yourself as well. So for me, with my background, I normally expect something quite hard hitting. If not, it's something which is sort of like almost like a filler leading into something quite hard hitting to go bang. So for me, it's kind of like from a different genre perception or perspective. That's a really, really nice contrast to actually have that. It's almost like you're kind of getting a build in, but you do have all the elements there for the acoustic guitar. You've got the harmonies, the double vocals, and everything like that. So but actually, you tell me, well, what's the actual reason behind you believing that that's a great first song then compared to say some of your others? Is there anything?
Well, like I said, it kind of sets out the stall for what we'll be doing. I think for us as musicians, it's one of the songs that we do a lot, and we've done for a while. So for us, it's like the focuser. It's almost like doing a warm up without doing a warm up.
Which I think is a really important
Yeah.
point about,
Yeah.
which I was going to talk about in the moment now, so
Yeah.
appropriate, that a first song should be something you're very confident
Yeah.
with. Because you obviously, and particularly if it's a big crowd or a big gig or a difficult gig, you need to settle down.
Yeah.
You need to relax. You need to do something that you're confident with, that you can give it your all. So that obviously serves that function for you. Yeah. So how would you present that then? Do you normally go on stage and then just launch straight in, or do you give a bit of backstory? Or
No, we tend to just do it as is. Basically, we tend to just introduce ourselves and then basically just get into the song. Really, that's how we do it normally. We don't have that much pre-banter, something that I'm not very good at doing because I'm a bit shy of it in some ways. And that's something that you do a lot. You structure a lot of your sets so that you have a kind of you have an arc going through them in terms of how you set up. But we're very, very bad, or tend to do any kind of intro.
And do you think you should do? Obviously they should.
It's a good question.
Would you like to?
Or does the music do the talking for you?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, in some ways, I think me and Andy kind of think the music should do the talking. I mean, I'm working with Andy now, where we're actually doing a kind of when we do a rehearsal now, we have about 10 songs that we do every week. We get together, and we're working together off doing a little bit of banter between ourselves in terms of that banter being something that we could then transfer into doing as a set.
So it's a comedy set.
So it's more of a comedy. It's comedy. It's usually
with a bit of music.
With a bit of music. So it is it's more like a musical than a musical set, I would say. But yeah, I think for me, that song sets out what we want to be doing for a set in front of an audience and gets us comfortable, so that then they're comfortable. If the audience sees that you're in control and you know what you're doing and you have a range, then they think, well, maybe these guys are worthwhile listening.
But I would say that then that kind of contradicts some of the stuff we've talked about before about what's the story. That obviously, all three of us, we've talked very much about the sort of narrative arc of a song, or the narrative arc of a set. But you don't give us any kind of you don't lay out what is this song about, which obviously is a deliberate choice. Do you feel that this song, if you were to, if I was to stick a microphone in front of you and say, Sohail, tell me about what this song's about, would you be comfortable to do that?
I'd say this basically it's about life, and it's about you and your journey through life. It's about all of us and our journeys through life, and that we are all amazing, and we are creating our own worlds together and singularly by ourselves. So that's why I say it's kind of a bit of an anthem-y one.
And quite positive.
A positive song, and about relating your own truth.
And again, that's a kind of a trick to get your audience on side. And it's either we're here in the room and we're not those bastards out there, kind of thing, or something. But it's also about saying, thank you for coming and you're amazing. So that's a kind of very positive kind of
message.
And it might seem a little bit trite to when you sort of break it down to say that. But actually it works. It does work with an audience to pull them in, to make them feel it's, we're in this together.
Yeah, I mean, when I grew up with a lot of this, angsty, I'm wearing a t-shirt today with 9 Inch Nails, the Tool, the bands like that who would be sort of less willing to talk. In fact, they did a 9 Inch Nails show, I think it's the All That Could Have Been live recording. I don't think he said hardly anything to the crowd, but he might have uttered a couple of words, I think, before one song, but it didn't, because I think there's that kind of understanding amongst them within that genre that the music does do the talking, or if it doesn't, then there's a deliberate case for actually not doing the whole spiel thing. It's almost like a theatric in itself. We're going to sort of let the songs just run into each other and let you have I guess like how dance music does, run it just like that. So it's interesting because when I was in bands before, I would follow a similar model. That would be the kind of style. Whereas nowadays with my solo stuff, and it's actually been encouraged by you, Bar, to actually give a bit more because it is a personal project. So to give a bit more back have a bit more conversation with the audience and kind of give a bit of context.
Yeah, I you know, as somebody who goes to a lot of gigs, I do find it sometimes quite difficult when you have somebody playing a song, particularly quite a difficult song. It's not an immediately catchy song, or it's not immediately very accessible. And I feel like I do need something to give me a reason why I'm listening to you.
Accessibility, that's an interesting thing, actually.
You know, and it's, you know, I'm sure we'll go through that and trash that in some ways. You know, that we're not, because we're not commercially, you know, we're not Stop Aitken and Waterman, or you know, or Madonna, or whatever.
Because your example, yeah. Well, like, I mean,
I know those references on the same ages.
Okay, but
we have to work with.
but just the assumption that what you will do is, you know, a good song is not necessarily the song that is immediately catchy and everyone sings along and blah blah.
Yeah.
There are lots, you know, there's so much more to good songs. But sometimes you do need to give an audience a hook or a way in.
I think it's just the building of relationship, and it's how your relationship is. So for someone like Nine Inch Nails and a lot of really heavy bands, I think that kind of works.
Yeah.
Because that's part of your kind of being too cool for school kind of
Yeah, but there you go. Yeah, but
I think if you're wanting to build a relationship with an audience and take them through that arc of a journey, I think you need to do a little bit of talking as well. And I'm saying I'm very bad at that, but that's something
and I think particularly if you've got an audience who, you know, you know, occasionally you do a gig where there's a few people who've seen you before, but almost exclusively we do gigs where people don't know us, or people haven't heard our music, haven't bought all the albums, haven't sat at home learning the words and all that. So you have got to. I mean, you know, again, which is the point of today's podcast, is to talk about how you've got to hit them hard and you've got to drag them in with you, because they haven't got all that other stuff that goes with big pop stars or stadium rock kind of thing.
And I think also it's the venues that you're working in as well. I think there's an element of storytelling in what you need to be doing as well. Yeah. As well as being a singer-songwriter, you need to be storytelling in order so that people, you know, again, create that relationship with the audience, how they feel about you and how you kind of feel about their presence as well in this room. It's people that you want to listen and want to have some response from.
Yeah.
I've got one more question in about this. So, if you're putting out a single, is this the song that you do?
This probably would be the song that we would use. Yeah, I imagine. And then on the B side, if there's such a thing as B sides anymore, I don't know. Or what kind of weird media you young people use nowadays? You know, and your good old 45. If there was a 45, it would be one of our more hard hitting songs.
Sure.
But yeah, this is probably the one that we choose for our A side. Yeah.
So you said before, open mic. If you had one song to play on the night, would you still?
Yeah, probably this. Or if there was something new that we learned and were comfortable with and wanted to try it out with the audience, I think we'd maybe try a different song. But I think if we had 2 or 3 songs, and definitely we'd use this one, especially if we hadn't been playing together for a while in front of an audience, because it's just a way of us again hooking in with each other so that we can then give something to the audience.
It's interesting because you've seen me at open mics a few times now, and I've you'll be familiar with The Saws and Me and A Makeup Tune, which are always the two that I play. I'd always go with A Makeup Tune as a single, but not as an opening song, because I feel like it needs some kind of intro. So that's how they were designed. For Saws and Me is supposed to be the intro track. It's a first song and it's more kind of mellow and kind of creeping into that hard hitting one. But if I was to put out a single, it would be A Makeup Tune because it is that hard hitting poppy kind of sound as well, like that. But you know, that's just the way that I'm sort of you know, that's the way I see things. That's how I'm doing it. But if I was only given one song, I'd say like, it's going to be a makeup tune, and I'm going to play that one because that's all the time.
And you're fighting against this whole. You've got 8 seconds to get their attention, or 4 seconds, or whatever. You know, hopefully, if somebody's listening to the album and has bought the album or has gone that far, they'll at least give you a listen. Whereas if you are talking about somebody who's just scrolling through a whole selection of stuff, you've got to hit them hard. You've got to do something that makes them think, oh, hang on. What's going on here?
Precisely.
But by whatever means, you know, and that can be through noise or quiet or, you know, funky chords or rhythm or whatever.
Are you doing any noise or funky chords for us today, Bar?
The chords I'm playing are fairly straightforward. But
talk to us about your song.
Do you want me to move on to? Yeah, okay. So the song I'm going to do now, I have about 4 different songs that I would likely start a set with. and that will be, very much, about, taking a measure of the room. Who's here? Why are they here? What's going on? Also looking at how long a set I've got, because I always say that a perfect length for a set is kind of 40 minutes, probably 45, and possibly with an encore if it's going really well. I quite often start my set. Then I've got two songs that I often start the set with, both of which I know very well. I can play without looking at my left hand or my right hand. So one thing I feel that's very important in terms of performance is you eyeball the audience, you move around the room. I mean, particularly if you're on a mic, that's much more difficult because you haven't got the physical space that you can play with. But you've got to grab their attention. You've got to make them think something's happening. There's, who's the funny looking bloke over there with the guitar? Oh, he's going to play some songs, right? And then if they see you and you've got them, and then you've got to do something with the song, which is, I quite like playing unplugged, because then you can move around the room and you can eyeball people and you can, see the whites of their eyes or whatever. So with this song particularly, and it's got a bit I'll come on to in the chorus where I do actually, it's got a stop bit. And there's a sort of talk over bit, just the last line of the chorus, and that's one where I might look people in the eye when I do each of the stabs on the guitar.
Okay, so the way that you've composed it, it's almost there for you to kind of bring more presence in as well.
I didn't write it as that.
Okay, but you found opportunity.
Yeah, I wrote the song. Also it's a slightly odd song because it has quite a nice foot tappy rhythm to start with. It has an intro bit of guitar and then a bit of a foot tappy rhythm.
I agree. I remember when you first played it, and I was like banging on the guitar, going,
I like this.
And then, and the other thing about it is then that I wrote the verses are in 4/4 time, so standard 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. The choruses are in a waltz time. So I've done that thing about changing the tempo, which means that makes it slightly odd. And for that reason, I also think it's quite a good one.
It's a very James Bar Bowen thing to do.
Thinking what's going on here. Other people do it sometimes. Mostly it's something I don't do. Mostly I do, you write a song and you do it in the same time signature that you as the rest of the song. There is the point about if I'm particularly playing solo, obviously you can speed up and slow down within a song for emphasis, and you can use your stops and leave it a bit longer or whatever, which can also be quite a kind of an audience grabbing thing because it's saying, oh, something slightly odd's happening here. It's not just a banging beat that's just going round and round and round. So,
well, without further ado, let's hear it.
I'll play. So this song's called The Irony Monger, and this song I wrote a long, long time ago. And there is a long story that attaches to it, but I don't normally tell it nowadays. I used to when it cropped up at different places in the set. But I always think for the first song of a set, there is an important thing to introduce yourself and to grab their attention as I'm going to play now. But then you might as well just get on with it. And because the story behind it is quite convoluted and it's quite difficult to say exactly what it's about because it's about existential angst and freedom, which, kind of all my songs are about, but then so are all of yours. So, and almost 98% of the songs that I've ever heard. So anyway, it's called The Irony Monger, which I thought was a fantastic joke because, you've got an ironmonger. But an irony monger is one who deals in irony. So it's it's also got a kind of contradictory in itself. Anyway, I'll play it and see what you make.
Go for it.
Right, so here we go.
Unlocking the matrix with a new vanity. The irony monger gave me the Said he lived for the minute and had done so for a while. Now the name that he gave me has never been one of mine. But I didn't contradict him till then, I've been getting on fine. We were casting around for the names of some people with a hidden agenda, an expression of greed. The bypass of conscience led outside the law, but not till we all are, is anyone free. The irony monger gave me the news with a smile. Said he lived for the minute and had done so for a while. Now the name that he gave me has never been one of mine. I didn't contradict him till then, I've been getting on fine. The security coded X-rated detector bypassed my eyes and implanted my brain. His personality blueprint got way out of my league. My token resistance was always in vain. The irony monger gave me the news with a smile. Said he lived for the minute and had done so for a while. Now the name that he gave me has never been one of mine. But I didn't contradict him till then, I've been getting on fine.
Yeah.
Woo! Okay, thank you very much. So structurally very simple. Verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus.
Yeah, it's a great opening song because you got the riff that intros it, and then it's straight in bat that. You know, it's got
Yeah, and it's, you know, like I say, I think that's quite a foot tappy rhythm, and that works.
I don't know who else at home was tapping the foot right there, but I was slapping my fist to my knee. It's a bit sore now.
Sohail was moshing.
I was, but you couldn't see that, ladies and
Put
gentlemen.
my chair back together, please.
Yes,
I had my t-shirt off and everything.
Yeah, so can you clear up that mess, please?
But yeah, so for you, is this an opener to the album?
No,
It's not, is it?
No,
It's
I-
about 3 or 4 tracks.
yeah, I mean, so my latest album, for different reasons. Because if I'm doing something solo, obviously I've got less texture in what I can do, and I don't. And to be honest, I don't think it's the greatest song I've ever written. I think it's a nice song. I think it works, but. Quite honestly, on the album, I've used it as another song, you know, which is possibly second, but something else is kind of showcased as first.
Right. And where do you place that song in the set usually then?
That other song, well, occasionally, if I'm playing to a very political audience, I might start with it because again, I think it does.
You did say it was a choice of a
I've got a choice of a few. So, I'll play. So the other one I might use is there's another one, but the Butcher's Apron is the one that I start on the album with because it starts off with a really nice, I think, menacing.
Yeah, the Galloping Country.
And then you hit it a bit harder, and we go round.
Yeah.
So on the album, because I've got lots of other musicians playing, what I do is then do a stop, and instead of me playing that rundown, I get the accordion to play that. So I get Sam to play that on the accordion, and then that's a different thing. Because also as an opening song on the album, it also starts very quiet. And the idea is to also draw the audience in, so thinking, this is a bit quiet. And then once everything else is in, it's actually quite loud, but hopefully they've turned it up by then. So then they're rocking the house.
That goes back a bit to my point about the having like an intro track that can also have the same kind of effect if something does start quiet, like The Swords and Me. It's kind of like, oh, what's happening here? This is quite sparse. This is quite, this is going to go somewhere. So you don't give everything away at the very beginning.
Yeah.
You spend a good 30 seconds to a minute,
Yeah.
just sort of building and building.
Yeah.
So an equally viable device.
Yeah. I mean,
IMO.
that's only using sort of 10 seconds of that. But yeah,
Sure.
it is the idea about, just give them a little flavour and then bang, hit them hard. But yeah, so it's, but other songs that I might do, like if I sometimes get a feel of a room, and particularly if there's been other artists on who've all been doing very similar to what I do, I might start the set with an a cappella song, so unaccompanied, which is also quite a, it's in terms of confidence, it's something I've had to practice to be able to just go bang straight in, and the one that I tend to use is just an a cappella version of a song by Nina Simone called Work Song.
Oh, okay.
Which also works because then you can do it, again, physically, you can eyeball the audience, you can also use your body a little bit as a way to draw them in.
And I think that's kind of key, because what someone once told me about, it works for theatre, it works for any live performance, but it's a theatre thing, but it also works for live performance. Well, being social animals, it takes time for us to adjust to from an audience perspective. It takes time. This is just like social animals. It takes us time to adjust to the environment that we're in a social environment, because we're sussing out all sorts of things that are very quite deep rooted and biologic and evolutionary in terms of, is it safe? Where am I sitting? What's going on around me? So it takes about 10 minutes of processing before your audience is going to actually be engaged, which is kind of key if you're first on. And you need to be aware of that. This is why we have warm-up people in TV and.
I was going to say, like, when
gigs.
Take like, rather than like a grassroots gig where, like, even if you've got somebody who's fairly renowned, if I go in and I don't know that person because they're not, let's say Madonna, for argument's sake, then there is that element of sort of like, am I going to like this? Am I going to feel comfortable
Is this
with
just the warm-up act, and shall we go to the bar? And
the amount of gigs I've been to where, like, the big acts have been playing, but they've had sort of supports in and people don't really know who they are, and the amount of folded arms there are, and if they can get people going, then you know that they're doing their job right, because you think like they've got the harder job because people don't know.
Or they're not here to see them; they're here to see them. But actually, they're giving you a chance.
So it's kind of decompression for the audience, and that's something that we, as performers, need to be aware of when we're performing. That sometimes you get the hard role of being the first person on, but also that it's going to take time if you're doing a set for the audience to adjust to you and to what your environment.
But and the point that you have a job to do
to make
for yourself. But also for all the other acts that are going to come later, you're setting the scene for how the gig's going to be, how the event's going to be, which I think is an important one.
Key,
Provided that you're booked with the right artist as well, because, and that's become, I think, more commonplace now. I used to go to all kinds of gigs or play in all kinds of gigs where we just didn't match the lineup on the bill. More so when I was younger, because everyone wanted to do their own style, and it was easier to get more people in the room if everyone brought fan bases along that were just there for their bands. But then at the same time, it'd be like, well, really what I want to do is, like, say if I was playing grunge stuff when I was in my teens, playing with a more sort of emo type band, it's like, let's see how many of their fans we can kind of win over as well. There's almost like a competition there as well. So but nothing ever changed. We would never tailor a set. We just say, like, this is a good song, this is a good opening song, and anyone with a musical appreciation
should get it,
should like it, even if it's not quite their genre. And that's what I've learned to appreciate as years have gone on, actually. Like, I go back to a lot of songs that I didn't really like when I was in my teens, and now, like, I really do like them because I appreciate them more for what they were doing.
Okay, and something that we haven't kind of touched on yet is a disposition of the room, and that means that's posh language for what is the place you are going to be playing in looks like, and how is it set out, because where the audience is and where you are in relationship to the audience is key. So when you walk into an venue, have a look and see where the stage is. Is the stage next to the bar? Ooh, that might be tricky.
Or the toilets.
Or where is stage? Some stage rooms are really well planned out, and some aren't. Some are just end on. You've got a stage, you walk into the room, and stage at the end, the chairs are in front. Sometimes you walk in, the stage is off to one side, and opposite that stage there is a bar, which is going to cause you problems because people are coming off the street, heading to the bar, and they're going to be in competition with you. So there's always things that you have to kind of just suss out how you're going to work that room as a musician.
Yeah, the better vendors for this, the better venues even for this, would be the ones which, in my opinion, you walk straight in and you see the stage in front of you, the bar will be behind.
Yeah.
There's that joke, like, when people don't show up but you're playing to the bar staff, and that's where this comes from.
Yeah.
You're facing them, and then you've got people coming in, because the first thing they see is the entertainment, and that's what they should be there for. Yeah. And it's always a struggle as a musician to kind of say, like, hey, listen to me. So that certainly helps.
Yeah.
What we need to do is deal with the situation, but if that's not the case.
That's not the case, yeah.
And, that's all the kind of advice. I mean, we can talk more about things like that, like how do we... So let's move on from the song then. Let's move on from the song itself. We've established that, there's no hard-hitting rule to begin with. It doesn't necessarily have to be the opening from your album. That's the nice thing. It's a freedom thing. I think we unanimously agree that the song just in itself has to be drawing someone in one, whether it's a build or whether it's a hard-hitting thing. Either way, it's got to be interesting. Yeah. You're not going to put track 7, which is like, just deliberately there as a sort of like a...
I'm loath to use the term of filler, but we all know that if you've got a 10, 12 song album, there will be a couple of fillers on there that aren't the greatest songs ever, which don't necessarily...
But work in context with the album as opposed to...
Yeah, which might be a really nice song, but isn't the one that isn't the hard hitter, isn't the engager.
And you need fillers in a set because you need to take a break yourself. There are some songs which you can just do, which allows you and the audience to take a bit of a back pedal on that.
Yeah,
thing.
I know that my songs are very wordy, and particularly because I play to a lot of non-native English-speaking audiences, I do quite a lot of explaining what's going on here to try and keep the ones on side who might not understand everything. But also sometimes that's good with a song that you've got a song that is, word-wise is much simpler or doesn't require so much listening to, thinking about.
I do have a pet hate when it comes to this sort of thing, and I'm not seeing you guys do it, but I've seen probably more inexperienced artists do it, and they say, it's the line that people always use, we're going to take it down a notch now, is what they say. Now, I think that it's a good idea to communicate to your audience, don't get me wrong. I think it's great, everything that we've been talking about and trying to involve them, but it's the line that everybody uses, and it's just like, it's not what I want to hear. I want you to do that for me. I don't want you to tell me that. The music should be able to do that. Yeah. Yes, tell a story about your song and whatever else and what it's about if needs be, but I don't gel with that sort of thing.
Unless, of course, you're being ironic when you say that.
But it does depend, because sometimes
True.
I would say to deal with an audience, sometimes you do have to sort of lay things out very bare. This is what's happening now in the set. This is where we're going with it. It can be a device to keep them on board. But
if they're losing you already, though.
Well, maybe.
It can be a bit awkward. So I'm thinking, actually, what I was wanting was more rather than that. But again, that really doesn't come down to what they say. That comes down to, have they got me in the first place?
Yeah.
Have they taken that 10 seconds to say, like, I'm going to grab this by the balls and really entertain here? So, sorry, were you going to say?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was saying, like, going back to this whole presence idea, then when people walk into the room, this is where we need to start sort of thinking about, like, well, at any point during a gig, like, someone can walk in, especially at grassroots level, because people are not necessarily there to see you. They might roll in around about 9 when you started your set about 1:45. So your first song might not actually have the impact that is required for those specific types of people. You can't really rely on everyone in the room going like, oh, you should have been here earlier, you should have heard the opening song, that was a cracker, that doesn't tend to happen. So what we need to do is just kind of ensure that the set is still maintaining some kind of interest at that point. And I'm interested about going back to this idea of having a double act, which you are, or even being in a band and having something about you that can draw in anyone at any time then. Yeah. So let's go back to the first song. Don't let me convolute this. Let's talk about the first song then. So you as a double act, you don't talk so much when you open and stuff like that, but you did mention that the element of sort of comedy or sort of playing off each other comes into play.
Off each other, or just playing how you play with you've got another person on stage with you, so there is an element where you're giving them eye contact. The audience hopefully is watching you two, us two on stage, or whoever is on stage, they're watching you. So what they're looking at is that dynamic, and then you can also use the dynamic of kind of drawing the audience in by being this little group, and then going out using your eye contact and using your presence to be with the audience.
Or as a solo, of course, then you also can do the trick of bantering with the audience. Now it's a very difficult one that sometimes if you've got somebody gives you a quiet comment that you pick up, but the whole room doesn't pick up, you might need to work on that and work to make sure that everybody's involved. But there is that point about trying to you sort of find your allies within the audience and use them to your own advantage to get the rest of the room interested.
And how you use, I mean, these are decisions, we kind of touched on this already, but how, you talked about being mic'd and unmic'd, gives you more freedom. And also, like, if you're going to be mic'd, how much freedom does that give you when you're there? If you're unmic'd, how much more freedom does it give you? But then, of course, the downside of it is that you're going to have to work a lot more harder to a room in order to, I prefer personally to be unmic'd, because I feel it gives me more freedom. As long as I can hear myself back, the bounce on the back wall coming back to me, I'm usually happy.
So that's the venue control, though, isn't it? It's kind of like more of a case of, are we talking more like the venue says, like, this is an unplugged gig altogether? Or are we talking about like...
Or ask or request, and then request the host who's going to introduce you for everyone to shut up. You can't control people coming off the street because they won't know that rule when they're coming off the street.
But hopefully they'll get the idea if everyone else is quiet and other people start saying to each other, which is nice. But... So if you're doing that, if you're going, is there not a fear that sort of like it might not have the same effect because everyone else is mic'd up? Sometimes I feel like, the guy with the gear, is the guy who gets the attention. Like a gig I played the other day, like someone brings on the loop pedal to an open mic, which no one else is doing. I think well, okay, but I kind of feel like I can't compete with that because the technology is there. But then I had to take myself away from that and say like, well, I do my thing. So do you ever feel like under threat for that kind of?
Not really. I think it's just you ask the audience to be respectful and ask the audience to understand that, and it doesn't always work. There's loads of gigs that I've done really, mostly open mic ones where you're in the middle and you're doing it unmiked, because that's what we were used to doing, not working off a microphone. Now we're more confident of working off microphones, but it's a skill, and it's a skill that you need to be aware. What are your skills? And I would say to anyone, if they're used to working on mic, then you need to get some mic practice, basically. Because once you stand in front of the mic, it's a whole different kettle of fish from singing it without any kind of support, electronic support.
Yeah, because I project very differently when I'm with a mic as well. And sometimes the mix can really throw things, and I might have to adapt my singing to make sure that things are working well in the monitors. And I get surprised when I hear the gig, say someone's recorded it, I get surprised when I hear it back going like, oh, okay, so that's how it sounded, but it's not how I rehearse it. And but hey, it worked. But that's always the most nervous thing that I have is sort of like how am I going to adapt to the sound like on the spare of a moment. I find that that's very sort of scary. I know my material inside out. I can practice till until the cows come home.
Till the bovines return to their habitual place of habitation.
That's what I was looking for. That's what I was searching for. Thank you.
So I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about the audience and how you grab the audience and this elusive thing that we call presence. And what does
once you've had enough, you just literally grab them.
How do you know you physically grab the audience? How do you actually work with an audience?
Grab them by the scruff of the neck.
How do you bring the audience in? And how do you project out to the audience? I think that's something that's kind of key, a key thing that a lot of performers try and attain. Some performers have it naturally. Some performers,
I would suggest that maybe there is, I know there is the talk about sort of natural charisma, but I would say no, it's learned.
Right.
You learn it, and one of the things about being on stage is you're in charge. It's your gig. This little bit of it, whether it's a 5-minute set or a 45-minute set or a all evening. While you're on stage, you can't completely control what the audience does, but you can control all the things that you do. And part of a confidence thing is that an audience is also more interested to watch somebody who does appear to be quite in control, appears to be confident. You don't have to do it in a sort of arrogant way or a kind of authoritarian way, but just, I know what I'm doing. I've got here, I know what I'm doing. I know, and it works. It's kind of about being professional about it as well. From the moment you walk into the venue, and if you plug in and you do your sound check, it's like having a plan. knowing what you're going to do. But then once you're on stage, you have a plan, you have an idea. You can go off script, you can lose it all. But if you've got a bit of a plan, if it all is going horribly wrong or something's not working or whatever, if you've got a backup plan, then that also gives you a bit more confidence because you feel like you know what's going to happen next. You know how it's going to be.
Some people are overly confident. Do you find that, and that backfires as well? So there is a.
Or some people are arrogant and try to appear like they're overly confident and actually not confident.
Yeah.
I think if you're genuinely unconfident, use that as an energy to work with the audience. You know, that doesn't mean be shy or be quiet or anything.
I was going to say, how so? How does that work?
Well, I think it's just being kind of just being kind of honest in that moment about it, because I think the worst thing you can do is, unless you know how to tap into that confidence and you're not feeling it, then is just to be kind of in this kind of space when you're just like quite vulnerable, I think. And that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people.
And I think that's the point in proving grounds such as open mics. I think you get the license to be able to do that, because I would always say that you shouldn't be on stage if you're not 110% confident.
That's true.
But, there are platforms.
There are, there's the professionalities that you turn up. There's a thing called crossing the line, as someone told me. It's like when you go into any place to perform, you walk through that door, there's a line there. And you leave your broken washing machine, your bad relationship, your bad day.
Hey, I'll take my bad relationships with me.
You rent behind.
They help my confidence.
The minute they say there's a line there, the minute you cross that line, you bang straight.
Then you're the artist.
You're the artist in that place. Yeah. So in some ways, I'm saying being vulnerable. What I'm saying is just like what I've seen those people be overly confident, and they're very, very, very vulnerable, and that comes across as arrogant, and that then doesn't really work because you're not. To impress them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing possibly about integrity.
Yeah,
that you do have to have a certain element of artistic integrity.
Yeah,
that you're getting up to do your stuff because you really believe in it.
Yeah,
and because this really is you.
Yeah.
Now we're all slightly different personas on stage to what we might be off stage. Yeah. But there is that integrity idea.
So, I'm going to give you a question here, because you know something about in or out energy. I feel like it's a...
that's kind of just a fancy word for how to bring the audience in, which is kind of things that we've already touched upon quite a lot. It's about feeling the temperature in the room. Is the temperature hot or cold? Cold means that it's just not paying attention to you, or that it's going to take a lot of energy to work with that audience to bring them up to a level where they can listen. And giving out in and out is the energy that you give out. How much energy can you give out in order to be able to...
And that situation depending on the temperature of the
room, basically, yeah.
How about those times when you use the more energy to try and uplift a room and it's going not to plan? Do you find that, at that point you write it off and say like, okay, this is the kind of gig that I'm playing, and I'll just get through it.
It could be because of things like the way the room is set out, the mood of the audience in general. Lots of alcohol is always going to be a big one if you're gigging in a bar where there's loads of alcohol around, and people just aren't interested. Or you get a mix of people who are interested and then they aren't interested. And people are infectious, aren't they? Well, you just need a couple of people over there to start talking before that kind of ripples through the whole.
Which is like I say, is about the thing about you also find your allies, and you almost get them to give you their 100% attention, and hopefully that's infectious as well.
We used to do that as bands. We'd say all our best friends, especially in 2008, 2009 when I was in a band called DV888, and we would gig London very regularly, and we'd take the same crew of about 10 people with us. And we didn't even actually have to ask them to do it. They were good friends of my bassist, and they were quite a rowdy bunch and very respectful at the same time. So they would use their rowdiness to really kind of, just do chants that we didn't ask for. And they would jump on stage with us. And I thought, this is great, because now the rest of the room are starting to go, okay, these guys are a big deal. And we weren't, but that's how you do it. You sell it. You say it's not just about the music, it's about the energy and everything that you bring.
Which is something, I know I've talked about this a little bit before about some of the tricks that you can learn on stage from watching street performers. So if you got a street performer and a few people stop, then more people stop and give them attention. Whereas if people are just walking past, and so you can manufacture that situation a little bit. by getting, you know, whether the people are your mates or whether it's just some people in the bar beforehand, is also that thing about, you know, setting up the gig. You also go and talk to some people and make sure they're interested in what you're going to do.
It's like if you were going to go and eat at a restaurant. I've heard this analogy before from somewhere. I think it was actually to do with having likes on Facebook back in the day, and they were like, you know, if you're going to go and eat somewhere, would you rather go into a place which is buzzing with atmosphere, with the people inside it, or are you going to go to one with no one in it?
Yeah.
You know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go for the busy restaurant because your mind's just going to go like, oh, it must be a good place.
Yeah.
People, like, you know, so if somebody's stopped there, they're not manufacturing, but creating a buzz for you.
Creating atmosphere.
Yeah, creating atmosphere for you. It helps things along the way because then, you know, people do have I don't like the term sheep mentality, but I can't think of a better term right now, but it is that. It's kind of like, you know, as soon as something's drawn attention, people go like, oh, what's that? It's like driving down the street and you see someone's been pulled by the cops, you slow down by 5 miles per hour just to peer over your shoulder to go.
I mean, so, as I say, also the other street performer trick that we talked about the other day when we were chatting, that idea, if you've got a few people in the room and then the bar's say in the other room and all the other people who've come to see the main band aren't bothered, then you get the half dozen people who are in the room and say, right, okay, after 3 I'm gonna get you to cheer and clap and make loads of noise as if there's something really mad and crazy and brilliant happening, and then hopefully the people in the other room are going to think, oh, hang on, we better come in and see what's happening. And I've seen street performers do that. You've got a small crowd, and so they'll say, right, okay, after 3, 1, 2, 3, way, fantastic, and then suddenly you've got a big crowd. And it does work again in a gig situation. If you get people to give you some attention, more people are likely to come in.
It's a classic advertising technique, like the flash mob.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same principle. You know, let's hire 50 actors to do a big dance in the middle of the street at 12 o'clock, you know, advertising something or other, you know, so.
Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I think in terms of the kind of looking at, it's working with energy all the time. But there's kind of like the law of entropy. There's sometimes you can only give out so much energy. And sometimes you just have to get through the set because it's just
and
try all your tricks and everything you want. And they're just not doing it. It's just that the audience as an animal, the animal of the audience is just not responding at that on that particular night. And then you have to go away and kind of break it down in your head about why, and hopefully come up with some ideas in order to kind of go on and do your next gig, basically. And maybe that's also a point to being professional, is not to take things too personally. You can take things personally, but don't take things too personally, because if you do, you'll end up destroying yourself.
Or I've seen acts get really pissed off at audiences.
Don't you know,
and start insulting the audience. Or start insulting.
If you take anything from this podcast, guys, do not insult your audience. Not saying that I ever would, but I'm just saying, like, just in case you might. I'm saying you ever would, but just don't do it. Refrain. No matter how harsh they are.
Even if you're
you just come across as a completely
grace, man. It's all about grace, decorum. Being respectable. Your image is this is what we're talking about. We are talking about image and persona, and you know, you need to maintain that. You're almost acting. You are acting when you're on stage to a degree.
You're presenting a sort of cartoon character of yourself. Now, some people are presenting somebody that's completely not them on stage. But I would say, as a singer-songwriter, that would be a very difficult gig to put off. But at some level, you're only giving a little bit of yourself. And like Sohail says, you don't moan about what a shit day you've had or what a crap journey it's been, unless you can make that funny. Or
unless you can say something, or this is part of your persona to work that as a performance.
Great. And make it entertaining rather than just whinging.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to open up a debate. While we're still talking about prisons, sit or stand?
Stand.
I don't mind either. I prefer sitting because I'm used to rehearsing sitting, but I've done more standing now, and I think standing is okay as well. I think now probably if I was performing without a mic, I would stand probably and use the space, and that would allow me to control the space and perform in the space of the stage without a mic in front of me. Of course, you can take the mic off the mic stand, but I haven't progressed that far yet in my microphone technology.
Whereas I would say always stand, even if I mean, obviously not always, because sometimes you do sit because
you might have a quite intimate song. With me and Andy have a quite intimate song. It's quite nice just to be with him.
I would say particularly solo though, always stand, because that gives you an opportunity to command the room better, because you're just bigger. You're bigger and you're more movable, and you can physically take more
Now,
control.
now this is where I disagree because I never stand.
Well, it's because you're playing classic guitar.
Well,
I suppose you could play it on the thing, couldn't you?
Well, the thing is, I'm
on
playing a
snake.
classical guitar,
Yeah.
but the style of music that I'm doing is equally like to Bar's, energy level. You know, it's like we do different sort of music, but the energy is still the same. And I personally believe, until somebody tells me differently, that like it works. But Elton John, I mean, okay, he's a pianist, so he doesn't have quite the choice. But my point being is like he can still command a room whilst being sat down.
I think a bad example though, someone like Elton John, because we only ever see him playing these massive gigs where he's famous, whereas what we are talking about is a gig where nobody knows you. I'm not saying don't sit, but I'm saying that as an example doesn't really work. What we
it does. It's not like he ever did stand, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, he has to start somewhere, and I think that if you can deliver, and like I say, like for me, like going back, taking it to the music in the first song, if you can draw people in, if you've got the banter, if you've got the eye contact, it's worked for me so far. I mean, last gig I did. No one knew me from Adam, but the first thing I did was kind of give a bit of backstory, had a bit of a joke, give a bit of a cheeky grin here or there. And, this actually goes back to what I was saying about, what do you actually say to the audience? How do you draw them in? Because I think you've got different sort of approaches. Like you tell a story about your song and that kind of stuff, which I still sort of do. But I kind of give a kind of a loose... a looser kind of background, but what I tend to do is I actually kind of relate it to other people more, and that's how I do it. I kind of say like, this is a song which is about when you are in a ... situation. Yeah. So at that moment it's kind of like, it takes it away from me and kind of says like, hey guys, think about this as a subject matter. I'm pretty sure this has happened to you somewhere along in your life, and then I think that's what gets people from my perspective is to kind of say like, hey, remember this that happened in your life, and I don't know you.
Yeah. The other thing is, I would say on that idea as well. One of the things, important thing to do is to also talk. When you arrive at the venue, you talk to people and find out what's happening. Find out if there's any big burning issues among the community of people who are likely to be at the gig, or has anything big happened in the town, or and then you might use that. And whether it's and again, never insult your audience. So sometimes you say it's great to be in this particular town. Because it's the third time I've been here. Last time I was here I had a crap time, or last time I was here I had a fantastic time, or whatever. But also to relate it to them, to make them think you're one of them, they're one of you. Yeah, we're in this together.
I mean, I've seen something as simple as a band talk about. I think USA played England, and the band I saw was the day afterwards. So, like, he just made a little complaint about losing the game to us, and it was in one of the World Cups years ago. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of funny. This guy watches soccer, It's like...
yeah.
I loved that. I just thought it was just a nice little touch.
No, exactly.
To come over to England and just to mention about your team being crushed by us, I thought, what a great way to get me on your side.
Yeah.
I'm a personal believer that, like, if you can sit and you can pull it off, then great. But I think it's different for every. I mean, you yourself, you do have that standing presence. You go amongst the crowd sometimes as well. That's kind of like a thing for you. So I mean, that's something I would never do. It's just not me. But for you,
going amongst the crowd is good. I've done it a couple of times when people have been talking at the back. I've just come and sat. You have to be confident. Again, it's about the same. If you're going to do something, you've got to be able to pull it off.
Yeah.
I went have some random weirdo next to him with the guitar going like, hey.
Yeah, but I can do that because Andy's playing at the back and they're at the back of the room, so I can, and it was unplugged, so I could do that. I could go and stand next to the people and sing at them until they shut up.
Yeah. So you bring your theatrics in,
And smile. What emotion are you portraying on your face when you're talking to the audience? Because they're going to model that. They're going to model that emotion. So smile or be angry or be able, but make it a conscious decision. Pick a side. What emotion are you portraying? Are you sad?
But again, if the song's a sad song, maybe you but between songs. Also, bring a bit of levity, bring a bit of humour.
Bring it up, because you want to bring it up to the level of people going, oh, now we're in this.
Yeah, this is good fun.
Yeah.
Even if your music is really, you know, or the songs are really, you know, hard-hittingly grim.
Yeah.
At least we're here to have a good time as well.
Bring us back to the music actually, because just before we wrap up, we've got this idea of framing your songs as well and how you're telling the story. You know, setting the scene, communicating this to the audience and stuff. I just want to expand on this sort of idea then, because like we've got first song, we've got kind of ways of doing it, but there's also ways how like you can kind of do this wrong. I don't know, we were discussing this a little, I don't know if you kind of know what I'm getting at, but you know, there's kind of like, you know, how you frame your songs. There's a song I played to you the other day and you said like, you've got to be careful how you frame that, because the lyrics say one thing and it could be taken the wrong way as well. So are there any kind of careful precautions that people take when like, are there any disclaimers? I mean, you've mentioned before in songs about like how you could be misunderstood. It was someone in another country who
somebody told me, you know, I do a song about basically it's a song about
the immigration, right?
Oh, there's songs about, you know, dealing with songs about racism, and me as a white guy, I've had occasionally people have questioned, who the fuck are you to talk about racism? And it's like, because it affects me as well.
Yeah. It has an impact on everybody.
And equally, the other one I had was I wrote a song about basically being, well, it was influenced by lots of things, but it was particularly about you know, men who wear women's clothes. It's called "Fuck Me Shoes," the song, and it's the chorus is it with my fuck me shoes and a fuck you smile. And the idea is it's supposed to be quite a light-hearted thing, but it's also it's a song of inclusion, and it's a political song about we're all in this together, and these are really important things, and about tolerance and looking after each other and not judging people and blah blah blah. And I have had people come and say to me, you can't sing that song because it's not about you. And there's all the issues about, well, how do you know it's not about me? What I get up to in my private life is my own business. But there's also the point about it that as artists and storytellers, what we do is we tell stories, and we tell stories about all sorts of things.
Yeah, I had to explain this to a friend of mine the other day who was on the phone, and the fact that I had to explain it made me really rethink things. Not rethink things, but also just kind of be more mindful of how I am framing stuff, because a lot of my stuff is about being, you know, well, I guess different, for lack of another word, or being able to express yourself when you feel kind of afraid to do so. So for me, it's, you know, the wearing of makeup and being okay with that, and even as a straight male, but then he says like, well, you've got to be careful because like what you're doing is you're bordering on the identity politics side of things, and people will say that exact same thing to you, like, who are you to talk about us, you know, like, you know, cause saying like, you know, off the bat, if you're coming across as like, you know, a white straight male in that regard, and it's like, yeah, well, that would be missing the point, because, you know, I'm not trying to tread on any toes here. What I'm trying to do is say like, hey, no, this is just me, and surely that's something that should be accepted equally as everything else, you know. Like when you say like, how does racism affect you? Well, it does affect you, it affects everybody, because what we're trying to do is make sure we in general live in a accepting society. So that affects everybody.
And also society in a way that you have to work things out. So I think it's really okay for that person to criticise you, as long as you can have the conversation with that person. And I think that's about working stuff out. And I think songwriting to a certain extent is about, we're all going to touch on subjects. Like that song you did, to me, it was perfectly clear about one thing. I don't know whether it was clear about you that it was, but it just brought up a whole set of images. But that also has a lot to do with me. And so maybe I'd come up to you after that and have a conversation with you.
But that's the point about being an artist, is you might tell a story which might be about you, it might be about somebody else or whatever, but the point about being an artist is to try and get you and your audience to think about these things. And maybe if we all come away from it, you know, whether we come away from it angry or unhappy with what's gone on or whatever, that's also part of the point, is to provoke thought, provoke conversation, and hopefully not fall out over it. I mean, you know, that does happen as well when you get into big arguments.
I think it's important to deliver those points as quickly as possible. The amount of stars that got misunderstood and actually lost careers as well, due to or had severely damaged careers, because even if they did come out with something that was after the fact, it was too late, you know, and it was just like, well, you know, the audience will always make their mind up about you faster than anything. And if you don't have good PR on your side, then, you know, you can forget it. So that's the other side of things. You just got to be able to say, this is what I'm about, and this is what it's actually about, you know.
And again, I do what I do with integrity. I do what I do with a view to trying to make the world a better place, to be an artist who tells stories, to explore stuff. Give me a listen.
Yeah.
And if you disagree, that's all right.
Yeah.
But give me a listen, and then let's talk.
And then let's talk about it. If you have a problem, you know, we can discuss this like gentlemen, you know, or you know, or whatever. So, but yeah, I think we've covered quite a lot there, guys. I think that's you know, really informative.
You're not going to play a song for us tonight.
I'm not. No, I'm on strike.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
You don't get a song from me
This is
today.
because he's got an album release happening, and
An
he's
EP,
not got
an
to
EP.
play release happening, and he's not
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
play any. So you're gonna have
He
to
doesn't
go.
want to give away all
You're
his
gonna have to go on
secrets.
Spotify and get that David Rangel EP.
That's it. That's it. I mean, I'm lost for opening songs because I've already played the one from there, and like I say, the single, a makeup tune, will be out. I think within 5-6 weeks anyway, and I want to just make
So
sure
we
that
can look forward to that.
Yeah.
we could all look forward to that. Yeah, so we'll get the shameless plugs in instead. But you know, I want to add a bit of drama, but I may play again, but it would be a different type of vibe for the podcast. But yeah, we've covered so the first songs indeed we agree that they've all got to be either hard hitting or build some kind of anticipation. We want to draw them in. It doesn't have to be the same one every single time. I think that's really important as well. Like, you might have a really good closing song for an album as well. That's another thing I just did forget to mention earlier, which had the same effect, because a closing thing still adds that drama, depending on how it closes. You know? But I've seen that work before. But just it's not just that. It's about having the full package, the total package.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, we have talked a lot about performance generally as well tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. But I don't think that like a song in itself carries itself far enough without the persona behind it. I think that's the important thing to take from this. That like, you're grabbing the audience attention. Yeah, you've got the first song, but you also need the other 50%, which is the image, the persona, where you're placing yourself in the room, being at, if you're lucky enough to dictate which venue you're at.
We didn't talk about what clothes you should be wearing as well. That was another thing.
Should we come on to that another time?
Well, yeah. I mean, by all means. I mean, like, I think we can pretty much summarise and say, like, either way, make sure that you are.
It's a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to somewhat relate to your image, that you know, and your crowd as well, being relatable. And I think for the same idea, that's the same thing as relating to your crowd as you're talking to them. It's again a part of the full package, isn't it? But yeah, we can look at. We can have an outfit episode, couldn't we?
We could indeed.
We could.
Why not?
Well, maybe not a whole episode.
Yeah.
Since we, maybe we'll have to bring the video.
Do I
camera
get
first.
to wear my spandex?
Oh,
That's the
dude.
big question.
So you always wear your spandex.
I could do some glam rock, and I could dress up for the occasion, and we could describe how we
Could
look.
do that. My kiss look. Yeah.
That's what. All right. So it's set in stone. In a few weeks' time, we're all going to dress up like Kiss members.
No. Worse than that.
But okay. So yeah. So
Okay.
So remember, you are in charge, guys. You've got to grab them with your first song, but you've also got to make them aware that you are controlling the room. So but I think that's all from us. So I have
Hopefully
been.
that's useful.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed.
Always good fun. Okay, see you next time.
See you next time, guys. Bye bye now.